Okay, I'd like to call to order the Stokes County Board of Commissioners meeting, joint meeting with the Board of Education for Tuesday, June 13th, 2023 at 5 p.m. here in Danbury.
Yes, we'll call the meeting to order for the Board of Education.
Okay, the first item on our agenda is the invocation, and I'll ask Pastor Justin if he would lead us with that.
Sure. Let's pray. Father, Lord, we come to you today. We thank you for this day of life that you blessed us with. Lord, we thank you for this nation and this, Lord, this county that we live in. Lord, so many blessings that you bestowed upon us, Lord. I pray that you'll help us, Lord, to make the decisions you'd be pleased with. Lord, in regards to the school, I pray you'll bless our teachers, our staff, our students, our families. Lord, I pray that you'll just help us to keep you first in all we do. Lord, just use us for your glory. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion for approval from the commissioners?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And the Board of Education would adopt the agenda from the Board of Commissioners as our agenda. So do I have a motion to adopt the Board of Commissioners agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much there, Vaughn. The next item on the agenda is a presentation of the school board or the Board of Education's budget request, and that's going to be by Dr. Rice and Finance Director Lynette Moore. Before you guys start on that, I'd like to give Lisa an opportunity to update some information, clarify some information basically on our fund balance, because that might be material, probably will be material to our discussion today, just to make sure everybody knows our audit results versus our current fund balance and so forth. So,
I just
Lisa.
wanted to make a clarification to Mr. Mendenhall when he asked me about the fund balance last night. I took it as you were talking about the audit presentation for fiscal year 21-22, which it is 16. But as of May 30th, we had estimated the fund balance to be around 14%,
Thank you for the clarification.
which is a big enough difference. I thought I want to make sure you understood.
It is.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa. I'll turn it over to you, Vaughn, if you want for any opening comments, and then you guys have the next item on the agenda, which is presentation of the Board of Education's budget request.
Okay. We will we'll allow each one of our board members to have a few comments if they like. And I just wanted to start out by thanking the commissioners for meeting with us today and having us in and discussing the budget. We understand that it is going to be a tough budget for everybody involved. Money's tight. We understand that. And I think, as a Board of Education, as a school system, I think we've done a good job looking after our money on our side of it. We're thankful to have Ms. Moore leading the way for us and Dr. Rice, and we try to be frugal with our money. I think we've made some great improvements over the past couple of years. Our ESSER funds have certainly helped us, and we understand that the county and the Board of Commissioners has been really good to us as far as funding goes in the past, and it's everybody always needs more money, but we're very thankful for the support that we've got from the county in the past and supporting our schools as we have. The school system, like a lot of other businesses, we are a business. We're in the business of educating our kids, and our business, inflation has hit us just the same as it's hit everybody. It's no different. The state has increased the hourly wage for our classified employees, and that hurts our bottom line just like it does everybody else. Food costs are up, transportation costs are up. everything just costs more. And that's, you don't have to go through the school budget to understand that. You just go to the grocery store, down to Sheets or wherever, and you see that. So even though it is a tough year, we still have needs, and we have to remember our main objective is to educate our children. And there's opportunities for kids sometimes in schools, but as we all know in Stokes County, the public school is mainly the school that the kids have to go to. For a lot of our students in Stokes County, there is no other choice. There is no other place to go. For some of our kids, the only time they eat good meals is when they come to school and eat at the cafeteria. At the weekend, sometimes we worry about them. In the summertime, when we're out of school, we worry about them. But so we do have some concerns, and we do want to try to maintain our funding and try to increase it if we can. But we have challenges just like every other business in the state, the nation, or whatever. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Bryant, and comments from Mr. Bryant, if you'd like.
Yeah, I just want to thank y'all for meeting with us and listening to us. To go out and think about our budget and see what y'all can help us with as much as possible would greatly be appreciated. Inflation has killed us all, just like Vaughn said. He pretty much covered about everything. But one thing, like our HVAC, we got a lot of stuff that's in real bad shape. Even in our newer schools, we got stuff that's already wore out. Well, Stokes had to have a chiller replaced already, 20 years old. So, we got a lot of stuff like that we really need. The cost of it is astronomical anymore. What you could do 2 years ago, you can't do now. So I remember Winston-Salem Schools was going to build 3 schools, pulled a bond for it. When they got ready to build the first one, they didn't have enough money to build one, much less the 3. That's how much inflation has killed us. So anything y'all do to help us, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bryant. Mr. Rogers?
You want to do her next? Oh, okay, starting here, go there, all right, whatever. Well, best I can tell, this is my 11th time doing this. And I will say that the last 7 have been a whole lot less painful than the first 4. I want to appreciate the trend that your board has taken in increasing spending to as best Stokes County can afford level. I want to thank you for what you've done, what you continue to do. I'm not going to echo the inflation. We all know everything we buy now costs double what we feel like it should, and probably 30% more than it was last year. So we're just trying to do the best we can for the taxpayers, the students, and the parents, because that's who we represent. Like Vaughn said, our product is the students, and our students are the next generation of Stokes County. We want to do right by them so that this county can continue to flourish. We're all here because we want to be. Nobody's forced us to live here. So we just want to make the best of what we've got.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Ms. Knight?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone said thus far. I know we're all in the business of educating students, and we want to keep that first and foremost. Yes, times and economic situations and things have made it more difficult. The state kind of rolling back some of their funding and then kind of putting that over to locally to kind of fill that gap sometimes with maybe what the state's not doing, or a little decrease in enrollment. That you guys have always been gracious to kind of fill that gap to keep our schools maintained and staff, students, everyone well taken care of. I think, like we mentioned in our last meeting, some changes are inevitable, it seems, with our declining buildings and some decrease in enrollment. So anyway, we just appreciate y'all's patience and being a part of this whole process. I feel like you guys are trying to be good to work with, offering your input, not hands off, and we appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. Mr. Duncan?
Thank you, Vaughn. And I want to thank the commissioners for, again, taking the time to meet with us. Mike's 11th time. This is my first time, and I'm excited. And also, as you look at the numbers, sometimes it does, from a revenue versus expenditure, does get kind of doom and gloom because of all the things going on. This is not my first budget ever working on, just in this capacity. Another first for me in the last little bit was to see all the graduates walk, and what a honor it was to be a part of that day for so many. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here, to make sure that they have the best education, so they are prepared to enter into whatever the next phase is in their life. And so, as we think about all the decisions, looking through previous things, I've got some questions I'm sure I'll get to, but just as we've said many times, just keeping kids at the forefront of our decisions. Behind every dollar, behind all the spreadsheet, there's a child that's touched, and so I want to make sure that we keep that in the forefront of all we do. But again, I'm excited and just thankful that we have an opportunity, as has already been said. We may have some limited resources, but I wouldn't trade living in Stokes for any other county. So. Again, just thankful. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. And Mr. Duncan is correct too. As I know, some of the Board of Commissioners have been at the graduations, and that is a special time, and it really does hit home for us when we see those graduations. Mr. Rogers told me when I first got on the board that when you went to those graduations, you would it really hits home and makes you realize why we do what we're doing. And he was very wise in that statement. So I've learned that he's
One of the few times.
he's very wise all the time. I can tell you that he's a good mentor for me. But so that brings us to Dr. Rice and Ms. Moore. If y'all want to present.
I won't take a lot of time. As y'all know through the years, Ms. Moore is the one that I know through the years that Ms. Moore is the one y'all want to hear from because she has the knowledge that goes to it. Just to echo what everyone else has said, if I believe y'all have a copy of our proposed budget. If you look at page 5 on that, there's a blue section in that. On that 5th page,
We don't have a copy. I did bring some.
Ms. Moore's got some more copies if you need some.
You got more copies? You need a copy? Okay.
Thank you.
It's in here.
Yeah, I took mine out at home working over it, and I left it there signing it.
Anyone else?
but if you look at page 5 on there, while there is certainly an increase in the amount that we're asking for this year, we have only asked for 3 new requests this year. One is a substitute calling system. It costs about $15,000, and that's an automated system to call substitutes. As you know, with COVID and other issues, we need substitutes. Classified employees, a lot of times, are doing that at nights and stuff, which accrue overtime. So this will be, and will end up resulting in comp time later. But this is a $15,000 that we think can save us a lot of manpower. The second one is athletic trainers for our high schools. As you know, with the athletics that goes on, there are injuries. And while a sprained ankle is certainly something to be taken seriously as well, we've had some more serious injuries lately. We've had kids knocked unconscious at games. We've had kids that lost feeling in their arms and legs at games. And thanks to Mr. Rogers and the connections we have there, we've got a good partnership with Wake Forest where we've brought in some young medical students to be at the sidelines to assist with us with volunteer hours. But the safety of our students is important, and we feel that there are other surrounding counties that have these certified athletic trainers, and that's something that we are asking for as well. The third one is Educator's Handbook. one of the frustrating things that teachers have is when they send the kids to the office getting feedback as to what happened with that. Educator's Handbook kind of closes that gap. It's a computer system that will help us with our discipline, and again, district-wide in 19 schools, it's $13,000. That combined is $103,000 for those 3 items. That is the only new request we are asking for this year in our current expense budget. Everything else that goes up has to do, again, with inflation, a rising cost, increased salaries from the states. It is to keep us looking the same this year as it was last year. And that's all we're asking to do, is to basically stay whole except for 3 little things. As they talked about graduations, we have a successful product in Stokes County. We had a kid just this year get the Moorhead Scholarship for the full ride, life-changing full ride at Carolina this year. At the graduations, for those of y'all that were able to attend, you heard other kids with full ride scholarships at different places. The amount of kids that were accepted into college, the amount of kids that had already graduated community college from the time they walk out of our doors. The people that have certifications, CTE certifications, and are career ready, and we keep looking to expand those options as well. We have a successful product. We're asking to keep that in place for our students in Stokes County. Now, with that kind of an overview, I'll turn it over to Ms. Moore to kind of go through some of the details, and then we're certainly here to answer any questions after she finishes.
Okay, thank you. I know you all have received a copy of the budget, but I just want to kind of summarize it a little bit for you. Our actual request is $17,865,936 in the current expense budget. And in the total request, that's like 11.85% increase. For county appropriations, it would be like 11.83. In this budget, basically salaries and benefits and utilities will make up right at 73% of the request. So it doesn't leave a lot of room for other items. In the budget, we've included a 5% salary increase, not knowing, of course, at this time what's going to happen with legislation. One of the big items, too, would be our matching benefits. We, of course, pay the 7.65% on all the salaries from county funds for Social Security. Our retirement rate, which is much higher, I think, than the counties, is we're projecting it to be 29%. So when I say that, for every salary we pay, we would have to match 29% if they're indeed eligible for retirement. And we're estimating hospitalization like it's $7,900 a year. So when you add your salary and benefits, it takes a large amount of money just to meet the salaries in that part. Overall, you can see increases, decreases by line item. If there was a situation that we felt like that we could cut something, you can see that we've actually have been able to do that to come up with our information. Like Dr. Rice said to you, the new request he has went over. But as you go through, if you have questions, as you look at this, we will try to answer those as we go. We've even, with our technology piece, tried to show our board and your board here how much we're even putting in from state and federal funds to help back up our technology program as we go through the year. So I'm ready to entertain any questions that you all might have at this time.
Okay, so you're finished, Lynette?
Yes, sir.
Okay, for questions? Okay, before we get into questions, do any of our board members have any opening comments you want to make? Want to say anything?
Yeah, I will. I think, I don't know that I have everybody beat, but I think this is my 18th.
You had me beat.
15 on your side and the third one on this side, so.
Ms. Moore might be the record holder.
I think she is. I think she is.
I think combined.
And I don't know that anybody will ever beat that record. But I just appreciate y'all coming and meeting with us today and, giving us an opportunity to get our questions answered. And being that I sat on that side of the table for a long time, I totally get where you're at and where you're coming from. And I think this is a very reasonable request for sure. I think that what I hope that we don't lose sight of is that, you know, I don't want this to be smoke and mirrors and a game of gotcha or trying to use schools and education and children as a political pawn in this situation at all, because we got to all get past that and move on to kids and education. And it's like has already been stated, you know, education is a great equalizer. Not all kids have an opportunity to have school choice, and they don't have an option of a private school or charter schools or homeschool. Their parents work, and I think y'all do offer a very good product. And when I sat on that side of the table, I always said Stokes County has to be the Chick-fil-A of choices for your kid. There shouldn't be any reason you shouldn't want your child to be in Stokes County schools. And I think that y'all have strived to make that a reality and have really, you know, if you just takes going into another school system for a little while, and I'm sure you see it, Mr. Bryant, in Forsyth County, and my daughter did in Forsyth County, and that's why she took a pay cut to come back to our county, because these kids, it's just a different atmosphere, and the love and the family atmosphere is worth a cut in the paycheck to be able to teach in your home county with that kind of surroundings and the support that she's had here. And so that's just something that we offer that you don't get everywhere. Looking over the budget, I think last year we had a unique opportunity the last couple of years to have that ARPA money, and that gave us the opportunity to give you about $843,000 more last year, because we had that to allocate, and we don't this year. I think y'all are trying to make some strides with consolidation, and we're trying to make some strides with passing a 1/4-cent sales tax, to get that to pass, the occupancy tax, and some ways we can increase our revenue streams to help fund the budget in the future. And so I think when all that comes to fruition in a year or two, maybe down the road, things will look a little brighter. Now, how do we navigate this year? I wish I had an answer for that. You know, I think we've got our work cut out for us, for sure. And looking at this budget, it's because I've looked at it, like Lynette said, there's not a whole lot of, there's not fat. They're just these utility increases, these gas prices, these benefits and salaries, and you're not adding a bunch of new positions. So, I mean, you know, just looking at the funding, I was looking at the comparison chart. I don't know if y'all have that of the property tax that's used to fund the current expense. And Forsyth County's is at 53%, and we're at 50%. So I feel like that's pretty good compared to Surrey, which is 36, and Yadkin is 35, and Rockingham is 28. So that gives you a little bit of a picture. So I think we've been trying, you know, and it's like Mike said, it's a different day than it was years ago when we had these meetings, and we are trying to do our due diligence for the school system, but it might be a little bit tough this year. And if I had a magic wand, you'd get everything you wanted. That's all I have for now.
Any other commissioner have any opening comments?
Sure.
Go ahead, Ron.
Glad to go. We're glad to have you all up here. Communication is key. And you've got to communicate between the boards, education, county commissioners. As Sonia said, we've been on the other side, so we know what it's like. And Sonia and I both have been, as far as what we do, education families. She's got a daughter, teaches, and she was on board of education several years. And,
My husband's retired teacher.
and I hadn't forgotten that because he was at Southeastern when I was there.
Yep.
I was in it 36 years. And son Jordan, who is a teacher at West Stokes. And so this is something that I think Sonia and I on this end, all of our board members, I'm sure have things they'll say during the meeting. We do have an vested interest in this. But this year is a pretty tough year. And as I appreciate Chairman Robertson saying that we have worked with them because I think Ms. Moore could go back along with Dr. Rice and look at the past 7 years. There's been an increase each year. And I think that shows a lot of commitment to the educational process in Stokes County. And Mike, some of the others got to know, it's about the kids. We had a motto with students first. And I was superintendent, and I'm going to tell you something. If you're not on the Board of Education for the money you get each month. I know what you get, everybody in the county, it's public knowledge, what you make per month. You're not going to get rich. Of course, we're not getting rich either up here as county commissioners.
Get ready to correct you.
Thank you. See how I brought that in, Keith. You know, I've been up here before where it was really lean as to what we got as superintendent with our commissioners. Our Board of Education members meeting with the commissioners. But I feel very good that we've had a good working relationship. I don't think anybody in this room can say we haven't had a good working relationship with y'all. And this is one of those years, I think you just heard Lisa clarify, we had our audit last night, and we asked for a unbalanced audit, and was given 16%, but she has clarified it down to 14%. And I know all of y'all know that if we go below 8%, the state takes over. We go below 8, and we're at 14. So it's going to have to be some tough calls made, not just in education. Our total budget is going to take tough decision making because if we gave everybody everything they wanted, and we always talked about needs and wants. If we gave every department everything that and some of them, there are a lot of needs, but there are some wants, and we could really be getting close if we gave everybody everything that was on that original list. If Keith, Rick, Brad, Sonia, we all looked at that when they came in and talked to us, all our department heads that first time. We knew right then that we were in some
That's when it
tough
became
time.
real.
It was tough times at that point when they started listing what all they needed. And but for this, I'm like Sonia. I want to work with the Board of Education very much, but every year throws at you different challenges. And this year is probably, let's see, this is my 7th year on the board of commissioners, and it's been by far the toughest budget year since I've been on. But, you know, we'll do our best to work with y'all again. As Ms. Cox said, can't always pull magic tricks out of your hat every time. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
You got a comment?
I think everyone's got a pretty
Okay.
I think I'm gonna hold it. I got one comment, just
We'll be back to you shortly.
to break the ice. I told Lynette a while ago, I call her Lynette because we rode the school bus together, but me and her and probably Ronnie, we have something in common that nobody has in this room. We'd be the only two going through 2 consolidations of Stokes County schools. I was one of the, how old were we, Lynette?
You never ask a woman her age.
No, I mean, when the North and South, they will be 60 years old next year. And we were,
Babies, y'all were babies.
yeah, and it's, I remember like yesterday, I remember parents talking about it. I remember that's when you went to the stores, everybody was talking about it. So I want to take this point to reiterate, y'all need to move quick on this. Do not drag your feet. I asked y'all before to come up with a plan because it just makes things worse. It's like pulling that Band-Aid off. Yank it and get on. That's all I got to say.
Okay, I'd like to welcome the Board of Education. I think it's fantastic that we have this meeting every year. Probably with some of the challenges we have, we may need to do more than one per year, the next couple of years, to sort out some of these issues that everybody's talking about. But I agree, it's very important that we meet and communicate and don't tell each other what we think they want to hear, but tell them what they need to hear. So both sides, one to the other. So great to have you guys here. Well, before we start questions from the commissioners, Amber, do you have a couple of comments you'd like to make?
Sure. I'll just make some opening statements. I wrote down a few notes here.
Okay.
So as most of you have already said, this year's budget has proven to be very difficult thus far. And the county's recommended budget was only 1.09% larger over last year's approved budget. So we were faced with increases like the Board of Education this year due to natural growth and inflation, plus an increase in services and personnel costs. As stated in the budget message, some tough decisions will have to be made this year in order to not only get the county at a secure operating standpoint, but also the school system. So when Finance and I sat down to review the Board of Education's budget requests, we were using the Board of Commissioners' budget goals to guide the recommendations. Specifically, no tax increases, to maintain the fund balance percentage at 17 to 18%, and to maintain the current level of services, and most importantly, to not increase funding over last year's approved budgeted amount for the school system. So the recommendation that was presented maintains the current level of funding to the schools for the most part. Most of the requests were reasonable, but the recommended budget follows the guidance of the commissioners and utilizes what is estimated from the various taxes, property and motor vehicle tax for current expense, and sales tax for capital outlay, plus a portion of the fund balance to maintain funding of the schools. Both current expense and capital outlay budgets for the schools continue to be significant, but a plan is implemented and carried out to make our schools more efficient. Once this is done, it would be expected that these budgets would decrease over time. So that the ADM level continues to decrease, the current expense budget requests continue to remain high. The budget request for current expense for fiscal year 23-24, as stated, was $17,865,936, which is an 11.85% increase, as Lynette said, over last year's approved budget. So the recommendation is to provide $15,888,048 for current expense in an attempt to maintain the amount of funding that was provided last year. The majority of funding comes from the current tax rate given to the schools, which has been and currently was this year 31 cents of the current tax rate, which is approximately half of the property tax revenues from that 62%. The recommendation for current expense includes $90,505 to the Board of Education for current expense to pay for operations and maintenance expenses for the Poplar Springs Elementary School, which will come from the 4-cent fund. The recommended $15,888,048 for school current expense also includes $500,000 appropriation from their current expense fund balance in order to provide for additional revenue that can cover a larger portion of the remaining request over what the revenues were able to provide. So per the audit, it was reported that the current expense fund balance here at the county as of June 2022 was $539,066. Last year's budget appropriated $175,000 of the current expense fund balance towards the school's current expense budget. The Board of Commissioners also unanimously made that decision to appropriate $843,000 of the county's ARPA funds to aid in the current expense budget. The Board of Education capital outlay request for this budget was $11,837,560. My recommendation was to provide $2,750,000, which includes using $200,000 from the fund balance for capital outlay. And as of June 2022, approximately $728,848 was reported from the audit to be in the fund balance here at the county for capital outlay. Based on the Board of Education's capital outlay request, $2,889,600 will take care of the immediate priorities, and $9,747,960 would provide for other capital needs to be met. So the total $11,837,560 request. The recommendation of $2,750,000 would take care of the immediate priorities along with some of the other needs that were displayed. And for clarification, the funding that is recommended in the budget recommendation for the capital outlay expense comes directly from Article 40 and 42 of the sales tax in full, which is specifically for capital expenditures for the schools.
All right, thank you very much, Amber. I guess we'll just start the questions back with the same sequence we had a while ago. Sonia, if you want to go, you're ready to go.
A couple questions. Do y'all still have Jonna Cheek's position in the budget? Or how are you?
Jonna has been, that position was funded out of the COVID funds, the ESSER funds. And so she has transitioned into a new position, and we have not filled that position at this point. And with that, those funds expiring, I don't anticipate we will reallocate her assigned duties.
Gotcha. Well, I'll make one comment on that. I think that she's been an integral part of our substance use and treatment committee that we have, and her input has been invaluable on that committee. And when you look, I just attended a 2-day conference in Durham about how to reduce overdose deaths in our state. And one of the things that is a key that is talked about over and over is prevention, of course, and mental health. And since COVID, I think y'all, I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, I know y'all know this, that it's the mental health, a lot of things with these kids being at home during that time and back in school and back and forth, and it's just revealed, I think, a number of mental health issues with kids and the adjustments that's had to be made. So I know the funding's probably not being requested for that position. And hopefully, I know the state just did some grants, and Surrey County got a big one with mental health. So I'm hoping that in the future that there are more grants for mental health, and we can keep a position like that, because I think it's very, very valuable to have, because you're just going to see, unfortunately, I think the trend is going to be more and more problems with our students and mental health issues, and I think you can blame a lot of social and economic things with that, and social media, to be honest. But that being said, I think we are going to have to focus on some mental health things, and it may not be this budget, but it's definitely something we got to bring back to the table. Could you tell us what the latest status on your efficiency study and the ORED thing y'all are doing?
They are supposed to present at the July work session, and so then our Board of Education will be meeting after that, and would hope to have that finalized by end of August, 1st of September at the latest, so we can start moving ahead with that with plans for the 24-25 school year.
Okay. Go ahead, somebody else. I'll see what my next question is.
Hey, Ronnie, you have a question? This goes back and cycle around till everybody's finished.
Well, I will bring up the elephant in the room. Y'all were waiting on the ORAD study. I was sitting in the room when you had the first two gentlemen that brought their study for 15,000. If you want to study that good for 15,000, call me next time. I didn't see a lot of smiling faces that night. I don't know if I saw any smiling faces. I saw a lot of gloomy faces. Where are we at, Dr. Rice, on after the ORAD study comes in? What's the next step for the Board of Education?
Our Board of Education will consider the studies that we've had, and we have made some sample plans ourselves, and then they will discuss that and come up with a plan moving forward. So again, that study will come out 1st of July, and then they'll get to work, and then over the course of the next 6 weeks, plan to have an approved plan. Let's go.
So your hope is that y'all will have a plan in place for the 24-25 school year?
Yes, sir. The plan is to have it done by the end of August, 1st of September. There's some grants that are due at that point, at the end of that month. The plan is to have a plan and then apply for grant money all in that same time period, so we can move forward and save the county money as well, whether that's a new construction, renovation, whatever the plan turns out to be.
Can I ask this? In applying for those grant funds, how specific do you have to be?
The more specific, the better, all the way to the point of if you have already contracted with a contractor and have blueprints and plans, you move to the top of the list. So just to say we have a need that we're wanting to do, you're probably not going to be considered. But if you have to say, and again, there's this list of criteria of things that get you more priority. Again, shovel ready moves you to the top of the list. If you're addressing consolidation, you move more toward the top of the list. If you're addressing safety concerns, you move more to the top of the list. The length of time since you've received a previous grant is considered. Now, it is nothing that says that all of those things have to be met before you get a grant, but all of those things, when they are looking at them statewide, is what gets you moved toward the top of that list.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, Brad, you got any questions? You want?
I guess I'm just looking at the big picture, at least in my small mind, that we're still going through internal battles. The board is just with our budget, trying to figure out we got the manager's recommended budget, but even with the manager's recommended budget, we're still looking like taking like $6 million out of our reserve, which is steep. And then that doesn't even really get us even close to a quarter of the way to where the problem is, and just like with y'all, is we have just neglected to raise taxes and just be honest and raise the taxes and spend the money in the appropriate way and get caught up with technology and professional development. What scares me is that, even with the manager's recommended budget, public safety, here in Stokes County needs a lot of money. So I'm having a hard time, I just want to be honest, I'm having a hard time being able to say, it really doesn't do any good for me to ask you specific questions, if this, what's your justification for this and what's your justification for that, when I don't even know what we're going to do in our budget. We've got to know. I mean, I want to do you right. I mean, this is my first budget, but I mean, I know the benefit of a good school system, and I'll do whatever I can. But I also know that I have responsibilities to the rest of the county too, and I come from public safety, and that to me, that's one of my top priorities. If you can't be safe, or you can have a fire truck rolling up and we need, or I need help at in Francisco, and the sheriff's office doesn't have anybody that can head my way. I mean, there's just so much to take into play. There's so many needs, and there's not enough money right now. And I'll just be honest with you. I mean, ultimately, it's just going to be tax increases. There's no way that we're going to keep going through this and give the citizens of this county what they need, school system wise, health wise. Like Sonia said, with the mental and the opioids, there's a lot there. So I mean, I'm going to have to we got to figure out on our end, what we're going to do before I sit here and question Dr. Rice about, hey, justify this or justify that. Because in my mind, I'm trying to justify how we keep this county safe for another year and still move a little bit ahead. Because I mean, we were told last night, I mean, our CAD system is like from like 1994. You have safety issues with that kind of stuff. I'm just being sincere. I can't sit here. I'm not going to ask you this and that and this and that when I don't even know what I'm going to do with public safety. So,
Keith, you got a question?
I got on page 1. Item 6. Explain that position.
That is a grant writer / public information officer. There are grants that are available.
I realize that it's a combo.
Yes, sir. It's one person will fill 2 roles.
I feel like the grant, I'm glad to see that, but free money is the best money.
And we've been successful this year. We've brought in over $9 million in grants into the county this year. And so, and we will keep pursuing that.
That's all I got.
Okay. Got a few things here. First of all, what we've done, I think, both the commissioners and the Board of Education over the past probably 6 months to a year, with our new board members coming on, and what we want to do is kind of baseline everything. Also, I think, we want to be able to, when we expend resources, we want to be able to measure the result and determine if we're getting a return on investment. So we went through a big drill within the county to baseline the needs of the departments with a couple 2-hour meetings with all department heads. We've gone through an analysis of the buildings in the county and what's needed to maintain them and upgrade them. We've gone through an analysis with the school system, same fellows, and did the same type of analysis on the facilities there. And so I feel like we've got everything kind of baselined about where we're starting from, which is not in a particularly good position. A lot of the decisions we make are all kind of going to be based on facilities, whether you can use them or not use them, or what you should do with them. I think on both sides of the house, that's certainly true. The hospital, the facility condition up there is pushing us on a decision path for that. You guys, it's been alluded to earlier, but you guys have 19 schools, and I think everybody agrees on both boards that consolidation is required and efficiencies must be gained. We can't keep the status quo going like we're doing. So, so I think that's where we are. We have a pretty good a pretty good understanding of what the needs are. We have, I think it's either this year's 9 years or maybe 10 years this year, but 9 or 10 years that we haven't raised property taxes or fire tax or any of those types of property taxes. During that time, everything has gone up, and especially during the last couple of years since the change of administration, it's out of control. I think anybody can see that. And the fact that we haven't raised taxes for 10 years has not provided revenue that was kind of like Brad was saying, to keep things where they should be and to keep us current in our technology and efficiencies that are associated with that. So we're in a bit of a pickle here, is my bottom line. So we've got projects, we've got unfunded mandates. For instance, we got to do a $8 million or $9 million extension or improvement to the courthouse, and we got to fund all but 2 of that. We've got an animal shelter that we're going to build. We've got a hospital that provides tremendous amount of services in King and up here in the country, in the north side of the county, that we're waiting on a feasibility study, and that was the top issue 3 of us campaigned on during our last election, and it remains our top issue: medical services, to provide those consistently and as much as we can across the county. We've got internet. We've also ran on putting internet in, and we're making really good progress on doing that. I think we're ahead of where we thought we would be, and we'll be in pretty good shape on that one with funding we've already got. So the funding is not particularly an issue at this point with the internet, but the other items are all projects. And then we need to, then we've got to figure out what you guys are going to do, and we got to sequence you into that group of projects that are being done by the county, and we have to do all of them. I don't think we really have a choice. I mean, yeah, I think you said 24, 25 for you plan to have you guys have your decision in August, and you're going to try to jump on the merry-go-round for 24, 25 for whatever that decision happens to be, which would hopefully include grant funding for one school of some type. Is that kind of a...
I would say that, again, I don't want to speak for the board, but I would say that's an accurate statement. Yes, sir.
So we need to factor in when we're going to have to borrow money. One of the suggestions I made to our board in our previous budget discussions, not related directly to you guys, but indirectly maybe, is that I think for any unfunded mandates we get, we're going to immediately pass those on to the taxpayer. There's no way otherwise we can't fund this stuff. We don't have money to expand the courthouse down there without raising taxes to do it. And we went through an exercise like this before with where we did the last round of new schools and improvements. And I was involved in that as county manager, and we created the 4-cent tax fund. And that paid for all of that. I thought that really, or paid for some of it, and along with lottery money and other things. But I thought that worked really well, and I never heard any complaints from anybody, and I don't think the other commissioners did, about raising those taxes 4 cents, because we made it really clear what we were going to do with it, and I think the county supported it. I think my approach will be, as you guys get your plan together, and we decide what it is we're going to do, what we're going to build, and what has to be funded by us, and what has to be funded by hopefully outside sources like grants. I'd say we get on that 4-cent tax fund, start riding it for whatever the next project and increase it and make it the 6 or the 8 or the 10 cent tax fund, whatever it has to be, and still hopefully gain support from the community by being really clear on what we're going to do with that money. And like I said, I think I didn't hear any complaints. The other commissioners told me they didn't. I think everybody's, when you explain to them, gives them visibility of what you're doing, and that would be my recommendation. So then we got to figure out how we, where this is going to fit in the cycle, basically. So, so that's kind of my thoughts, what my recommendations would be to our other commissioners. Let me ask a few specific questions. Did you say, Lynette, a 5% salary increase for who? For everybody?
We've allowed that for certified and classified, just not knowing for sure what legislation is going to do at this time. Yes, sir.
Okay. That's just a straight pay increase? Okay. To their basic pay?
That's off, that's the employees that are paid through county funds.
And basically what we do is whatever legislation decides for state dollars, as you know, we try to do the same for anybody that's paid from local. And
Right.
in projecting at the time of the budget, we just allowed 5%. It could be a bonus, but and not just a salary increase. But if it's a bonus, we're hoping that 5% would cover either a salary increase or a bonus. But it's just still unknown what's going to happen until the state budget's passed.
Okay, but you want to give some kind of pay increase?
Yes, at this point we are.
On this sheet you have in the very front of your package before you, the one before page number 1,
Yes, sir.
it shows salary and benefits 8959, 892, and then you go to 2023. Your proposed budget is $1 million more, right? Is that kind of normal for it to go up that much?
Well, when you go back over to page 1, you can see the breakdown and the actual increases. And I'll give you a pure example. Just look at number 2 for substitutes for schools. You can see we've increased that $130,000. And that's based on what happened so far this school year. It's what we tried to do is estimate where we were running for this school year and continue that. The only other difference that you might see in here, what we've received in our state planning allotments, we try to look at those, and if it's short or more, adjust accordingly. But it should be about the same. Of course, your 5% supplement will change each year based on what your salaries come out to be. That's included in your salary and benefits. The clerical custodian allotments, that ties back to state allotments, so that varies from year to year to what you receive to the state to how much you have to put into local. But each one of those line items, as you go through, you can actually see the amount of increase for each one of them.
Okay. It just struck me as kind of a big number from
And
when
your
you hear it.
benefits would be a big one on that.
Yeah,
It's
part
a
of it, right?
multi-layer thing, so like, if somebody's salary goes up and the retirement rate goes up,
Yeah.
then the rate goes up on the more salary. So it's a cascading effect that a certain salary increase also has these other things that tag along with it. And when you do that for multiple employees, it adds up in a hurry. And so, it's a percentage of a salary, but then everything else percentage goes up as well with it.
Yeah, so it includes benefits, all
It
that
does.
$1 million.
Lynette, since we have new board members that may not understand who's paid out of local, tell us what employees or what employee groups or how many positions are paid out of local, because the state budget covers a good deal of them,
They do.
but not everything.
This budget right here, I figured, right, it's in fact 84.95 positions, a percent of positions for hospitalization. So we're looking right at 84 positions that we would probably cover from local funds
For benefits.
for benefits. And that would include teachers, it would include clerical, custodians, maintenance.
Right.
That's basically,
How many actual teaching positions are paid out of local?
okay, we have 12 and a half actually in this
That's what I
budget. That's
thought.
what
I
we're
was
trying
trying
to
to say 11,
maintain
but-
from year to year.
Yeah.
And of course, that can be adjusted depending on how much you get from the state. That's when it would tie back to your state allotment.
So for the ones that don't know, the highest paid positions are always paid out of state, and try to keep the lower paid on the local.
What's the status of the state budget? I know that's a loaded
That's way
question.
above my pay grade. They were saying that we should have it early June, but then my understanding is when the Senate's budget was approved, it shocked the House. So now what we're hearing is that they're pretty far apart. And so I don't know. Again, you could check with Kyle Hall or somebody else that would know more than I do. I get third, fourth, 30th hand knowledge of that. But it's my understanding they're not real close right now.
And
But
that is
that
an
might-
important piece that we
Absolutely.
need to know. I
To
mean,
be honest,
yeah.
and again, for the new people sitting around the table, for common sense wise, this process is totally backwards. We do local first, and then we'll sometimes get our state, and then we get our federal budgets. Where if we would get state and federal first, then we would know. We would be here not trying to project a salary increase. We could say, this is the salary increase. Because while we projected 5%, that was when we had to have our budget approved by our board and to get it to y'all by May 15th and all of that. We're listening to people in February talk, and either the House or the Senate or the governor has projected one. And when we were talking 5%, and then the governor came out with like 18, 19%, I ran in her office and I said, did you hear what came out earlier today? And we kind of freaked out. And then the House came out and they said, well, around 10%, which again is double what we've said here. And then the Senate came in around 5%. So if they come in at 15%, we're in a much different spot of what we're asking for, but we don't know any of that, so our stuff's projection. And so it's backward, but it's statutorily, it's kind of odd. We follow the statute. We submit our budget to y'all in time. It's also a statutory requirement that we have a state budget, I believe, by June 30th.
Now, what happens, I'm gonna ask first time got questions, okay? What happens, the state is generous, do you adjust your budget to the county or do you pad your pockets?
Well, when you say the state is generous, if the state gives us, again, a lot of the state funding has to do with position and already salary. So if they say, we're granting y'all 600 positions and we're increasing salaries of this much, all of that is tied directly with those salaries, and those employees get that. Now, if for some reason they say, we're gonna give y'all an extra 12 positions this year, well then, that's where, you might have some wiggle room. It hadn't happened in my 7 years. Mr. Mendenhall, how many times that happened in year 5 that they just rolled in an extra checks?
I can't remember one.
So, I guess anything's possible, but, that's where if something like that happened, we may end up with a little surplus that year. Which again, if you notice in Ms. Moore's, then we throw in a negative. So if we planned for an expense last year that didn't come out as much this year, she's taking it off. And so we try to reflect that.
And what would happen in that situation if it happened to have extra, it would reflect back to fund balance to be available to use.
And trying to think, in my 7 years, we've only come back up here once and asked for more money. One time.
That's correct.
In 2016, I think, we came back and asked for additional funds. I don't have that in front of me. When things, and now again, and we certainly reserve the right to do that again. If the state were to do something that had a huge impact, we would need to come back and talk again. And again, that would be up to y'all if y'all granted us the funds at that, or if we just had to react accordingly.
What we're seeing more of, I think, in the last few years too, is they will appropriate funds and then they expect the local to match. So you might see that there's funding out there to give, for example, your certified, your instructional folks, your teachers, maybe some type bonus. But in order to give them that bonus, you're going to have to use local funds to match it. We're seeing more and more of that. It's changing the way they're doing
But they won't give
salaries.
kindergarten teachers a bonus.
They did not, but our board did approve And had we not had some extra money to do that, that's just an example, we could have been back up here to ask for that. But you're right, that's pure example, they exempted the pre-K.
Let me ask one more quick question, then I'll go back to Sonia for the next round. On the, this ARPA funding's been a real mystery to me, sort of, how some of it has flowed and been spent and everything. I was looking at one of our documents, either you gave it to us or Lisa did or somebody, that showed last year's revenues, and it showed that ARPA funding in it. Then it showed this year's zeros, because there wasn't another ARPA, the 800 something K, whatever it was, 800,000 something. And then you get over there to the end, and you've got the same number, which made me think that the ARPA got rolled into a recurring kind of thing versus a one. I don't remember the details of when we did the 800,000 or whatever it was for ARPA. Was it going to be spent on one-time items or non-recurring type things? Should have been, I would think.
I'm not following what you're saying, I'm sorry. When you start talking about 800,000, I'm not following.
You know, we gave y'all 800,000 of ARPA money last year. That one-time ARPA money we got.
Are you in capital or are you in current?
In current, I think. Current expense right now.
Okay.
And so we didn't have it to give it to you this year, but then the numbers still went up, which made me think that ARPA got rolled into being a recurring requirement versus non-recurring. That makes sense. That makes sense.
We don't do our budget by where the money comes from y'all. We do it by the overall check that comes to us. And so when we say we have so much expenses, y'all provided the money you did last year, the 15.9 last year, almost 16, 15.973. So that was the money that was required to operate the way we did last year. And again, to operate the way we did last year again this year would be that 17.8 minus 100,000 of the new request that we had as expenses rose. And so, you know, we didn't say, well, so much from taxes, so much from ARCA, we call it ESSER, y'all's just was ARCA, I think it's all the same type things. But we don't account for that. We're telling you the needs that we have.
In the budget comparison, we take what we actually received funding for that previous year and compare that to what we're requesting. That's basically what you're seeing here. And we do try to break it down from county to fines to Medicaid, this kind of thing. But that's kind of how we do the budget. It's kind of like Dr. Rice said, then we leave it up to you all how that actually comes in on the revenue side.
I guess another way to phrase my question is, since we gave it to you last year, but we didn't give it to you this year, did you ask for 867 more?
Yes, sir. I mean, because our need didn't change. And so
I thought we gave you the normal amount last year plus the ARPA. Am I confused on this?
Well, I think their request last year was still more than what the tax rate was going to bring in. So in order to compensate and make up for that difference, we gave 800 and something thousand of the ARPA funds to close that gap between what they requested versus what we could give.
Right.
I think.
Okay.
So it's still the same request, just.
See, I look at it as a total of what we received from the county. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just closed the gap a little bit for what we could do.
843. You used the ARPA to fill the void.
Right.
So before it got to us,
Yeah, because without the ARPA, we would have been able to give
we
you
see
less.
a check, we don't see the account that's
Wouldn't
coming
know
out.
that basically, in a sense.
Commissioner Morse, that's the actual request, and you'll see at the bottom 843. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, 843,000 from the general fund reimbursement ARPA to help with the budget request. So let me think about it. I'm still kind of confused about it.
So, well, we generated, just for example, 15 million last year. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. I'm sure I could find it. But say we generated 15 million last year for current expense from the property tax rate. And then we could only give 15 million, but their request was 17 million, just for ease of numbers. We used the 800 and something thousand dollars to get to 15.8 million instead of only giving them 15 million.
Okay, I guess some of my question, what if we hadn't had the ARPA money?
Well, they would have got,
What
I guess,
would we have
15
given
million in
them?
that scenario.
Yeah, that's,
So we were able to
You
help
would have
with.
either taken it out of your fund balance, or we would have had a deficit that we had to figure out.
okay. Okay, I guess I'm clear as mud on it now, so.
I was impressed.
Anyway, go ahead, Sonia. I
Well,
need to rest
let
my
me
head.
ask a question about the technology. Right here, gaggle, email monitoring and cyberbullying, that's a $40,000 deal right there. Is that something y'all used this past year?
Yes, ma'am.
It is.
And is that, it says email monitoring, I mean, is through email, is that a way kids tend to bully each other through their email?
Bullying, safety, we get constant alerts about that. There are sheriff's visits to houses at 2 a.m. based off of gaggle things. Let me give you one very simple gaggle thing. And I'll say this because it was in my family. My son got his braces tightened one day, and he sent an email to a friend that said, "I'm in so much pain right now, I don't know how I'm going to take it." Gaggle alerted that it was a suicide indicator, and the school got a call. I got a call as a parent that said, "You may want to check on your son." And I said, "I know exactly what this is. It's his teeth. That's the pain he's in, and he's dramatic." And so he didn't know how he's going to take it. But I did go check on him and make sure that he's safe. Gaggle monitors all of our all of our documents, in the Gmail suites of services, the emails, all of that stuff, anything. And even if they're using some other type of messaging system on our devices, every device that we have is monitored.
Gotcha. Well, that's a good thing. I know, I would just figure that most kids would just be texting each other from their
They do
personal.
use our devices.
Okay, all right. I was just worried about that. I was going to say we hadn't talked much about the capital side of things, but made me think of it when you talked about coming back up here in 16. That one of the things that was on here was, I think, $1 million allocation for school consolidation, possible engineering and renovation thing, and if that doesn't, if the capital side doesn't get up to where you need it to be, that would be something I would expect y'all to come back to us for a special allocation if that, when you get to that point.
The big thing is right on the top, and we wanted to be very clear about that we're going to be applying for grants, and because we're in tier 2, they're 95% grants. So while we might get a $30 million grant for an elementary school, I talked with the superintendent the other day that for a 500 student elementary school is about $35 million. We'll get 95% of $30 million if we do it. So we might could provide the county a $35 million school for $8 million. So we can get $27 million for free out of that. So we wanted to say we're going to be applying for grants. There may be a match required. But at the same time, if we're not granted a grant and we don't get a sales tax of 8-10% for the funding source, that may be money that's not needed too. And so that might help with that. But also, you mentioned the study that was done. As a reminder of that, with limited renovations to the buildings from Peterson Gordon was $54 million because of our aging buildings, and full renovations was $90 million. And as they said, and y'all heard in that presentation, that's not a true full renovation. That's not everything. That's full renovations is actually a partial renovation. If you have to go in and replace all the water pipes in a 70-year-old building, it could be more. And so we understand the urgency of that. And again, we're looking at 1st of July getting our final study, and then the next 6 weeks making some decisions so that we all know where we are moving forward, and as well as starting to look for funds ourselves to help meet some of those needs.
Can I ask just a quick question, just so I guess understand?
So, if I go back to the line item, like the questions on the line items. So, if we're asking questions on a line item and we agree that, well, you know what, Dr. Rice really doesn't need X, Y, and Z for $100,000. But that doesn't really matter to you, right? You just go on whatever the money that we give you. You all sit down and do what's best for
Yes.
the school, right? So why do we? I don't understand why are we going through these line item stuff and everything. Why isn't it just a decision to where, if we can fully fund what you're going to do, we give it to you. If we say, hey, we can give you, 5% of it, 10% of it, you're going to take it and you're going to do what's best for the school.
Mr. Chandler, it's a great point that you bring up. You're exactly right. Technically, the Board of Commissioners does not have line item authority in a budget. We're a school district. You have total amount discretion. And again, we don't get into where that comes from, whether that's ARCA money, whether that's tax rate, whether that's y'all's private donation after the meeting. Y'all give us a check.
And that's why the point I made originally on my thing is, to me, it's backwards here. It's nice seeing the budget. I'm glad we're meeting and everything, but to sit here and listen line item by line item, that doesn't help me any.
To me, the purpose of presenting this is so that you know that it's real needs that's really affecting kids.
Transparency.
And transparency to say, if we're asking for $17 million, we don't want uninformed people saying, y'all should be able to make it for 10. Because we need y'all to understand what the money goes for so that you see that there's real needs. Now, at the end of the day, technically, you're not supposed to say, well, we're going to give you $16 million, but we want you to take off the gaggle and we want you to take off that. When we get the money, our board goes back and does a budget revision at that point and makes an operating budget for the year. And if y'all come back and said, well, we wanted you to take gaggle off, and that's really not your choice. And if we say that this is for student safety, our board can still vote to approve that. Now, we may have to make another cut for that same amount, but that's our board's purview at that point.
Yeah, and to me, that makes sense. And I think it's good that we see the budget. I think it's good we sit down and we talk about, but and plus too, and it's with our board too. There's no strategic planning. So it's like right now, we're in the middle of trying to figure out our own budget. And there's never been any strategic planning that goes at the first of the year. Every organization I know, the first of the year, January, 1st of February, you sit down and you start updating your previous strategic plans, like where you're at, or you're changing. But we've never done that here because I can never find any documents that we've done it because there's no planning. And then, we sit here with the schools and y'all are trying to figure stuff out. And then we're trying to figure out, what we can give you and what we can't. It's just, I don't know.
It's boring.
We're wasting.
We need to see what they're spending it on.
Well, we have that.
We can't come to any kind of conclusion without having it.
We have that.
I know, yeah.
We have that, and we need to have that. And I'm saying,
All we're doing here is clarifying.
I'm saying, but I don't need to hear line items because I already know it. That doesn't matter.
I guess where that comes into is going back to 2016. We were short. Sonia was sitting on the board. She remembers these days. When we looked at it, we were like, to meet the law, class size requirements, those type things, there are so much that we can't change. We can't change what Duke charges us for power. We can't go into a year without insurance. Because if a building burns down, then we're in trouble. So we know what our fixed costs were, and we looked at it and said, what are the only things left we can cut? And it was local supplement or SROs. And so we came to the commissioners and we said, this is the choice that we are having to make right now. We're going to have to cut our supplement and cut school safety. We want y'all to know this before we make this decision and give you the opportunity to give us more money if you would like to. But if you don't, this is what's going to happen. And we wanted there to be communication, transparency, and no surprises. And our commissioner said, if y'all can come up with half of it, we'll come up with the other half. And we did, and we got through that budget year. And we finished the year with basically no fund balance that year. I think it was $100,000 in a multi-million-dollar budget. And so we finished with basically no money in reserve. And it was, we breathed easy at the end of that year. So the question, we're happy to answer the questions because we're at your mercy. We want you to know what we do and what it costs to do what we do. But at the same time, if y'all sit there and say, well, you know what, let's just cut them $2 million, we kind of want y'all to see what impact that's going to be so that you don't do something that, 1,000 people may show up at the next meeting saying, did you realize what y'all just did to our kids? SROs aren't going to be in the schools this year in a day of school safety because we have requirements that we have to do. The requirement with SROs, the funding for that is one in a high school. The county has been great to us to put one in every school. That comes at a cost. Again, that's why I say we had a good product. We want to keep our product. And that's what we're not trying to add to our product necessarily, very little. But the prices go up. And so if the revenue doesn't match the expenses, that means cuts are coming.
Right, and we're in the same situation.
Yeah, sure, I understand.
Same situation.
And y'all have a lot more
That's what I'm
departments
saying.
than just the school.
Yes, I mean, so we can't even figure our stuff out, what our bottom line is yet, and then we're trying to, at the same time, figure out, your bottom line. And again, it's a good meeting. It's, I like, we've had the stuff, but it's just,
Our bottom line is part of their bottom line. It's just when you finally get there. I mean,
When
we
you
got the
finally
big
get there, our
line.
bottom line is whatever y'all give us. So we just need to know. I mean, here's what it takes for us to bake the cake the way it's done now. Now, if funding's cut, we're going to have to cut the sugar, the flour, the butter, everything else. So it's not going to taste as good. It's not going to be appealing. It's not a good product to try to bring out. Because we can't go to the grocery store and say, I want to pay 2020
and
prices.
we can't either.
Right.
I mean, our employees right now, they're sitting on pins and needles because, there's no recommendation of a cost of living increase or anything. But then we hear the 5% that we're going to, give the school employees. That's
To
what the
reflect what
request
the state
is.
is giving
That's
us.
because
Well,
the state's
Well, yeah,
requiring it.
but I'm talking about the local.
Well, the
Because
local has
you
to do
try
what
to
the
give
state
the
does.
same thing from the state that you give the certified to the, what do you call it, to the non-classified.
No, sir. Let me try to clarify that. Last year, the state increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour. All of those employees, most of those employees, if not all of them, are locally funded positions. But they mandated, so we had to increase the salaries for all of our maintenance, custodians, office staff, people. We didn't have a choice in that. We had to increase those costs. Now, where the other thing comes in is if this year they were to come in and say, all the teachers get 5%, we're not saying everybody else gets 5%, but we have some locally funded teachers. Now, teachers don't know what fund source they come from, kind of like we don't know where y'all got all of your money. But if Sonia's sitting there and she's a Title I teacher paid out of federal dollars, and Mr. Mendenhall's a locally funded teacher paid out of county funds, they don't know that. They have no clue about that. And so we can't say everybody in the room is going to get a 5% teacher raise if that's where it falls into, but not y'all two because y'all are paid out of other funding sources. So when there are certain things like that, or again, if there's a locally funded and this goes up, if they increase retirement, that the retirement rate goes up for everybody, whether they're with locally funded or state funded. We don't try to level it. We just try to do it with the things that they tell us to do. We have to react to that. It's not that whatever raise that they throw out there, we make sure everybody gets it. That's not it. There are years that teachers get raises, there's years that classifieds get raises, and so they pick and choose. We just make sure everybody in that category gets it.
See, what I'm used to, and I'm not saying that it's right, I'm just saying what I'm used to is that when the Board of Commissioners, when we agree to fund, say, 10 teachers, in other words, the state didn't provide the funds to come, they weren't going to pay for 10 salaries, 10 certified teachers. So, when the board, when they say that, they've got to know at least that for the next year or the next year after that, we're going to have reoccurring costs, because we know salaries are going to go up. Because, like you said, if the state gives a raise and these other teachers don't know that that they're not getting paid by the state, that you're going to give it to them. And of course, you're coming to us. And so that's what I kind of mean about strategic planning and thinking ahead. We shouldn't just be looking at a one-year budget. There's certain things that are known all the time that are going to continue to go up. But I don't see no documents. And again, this is my first term. But I'm used to seeing projections. So when we're going to say yes, we're going to give you 10 teachers that we're going to pay out of the local funds, and we already know that's going to depend upon the state, whatever they do with the raises and stuff like that. And maybe it'll drop, maybe it'll increase. But I would have a hard time just blindly saying, yes, we're going to do it this year, we'll do 10 teachers. With the thought process, well, hey, we got the budget over, we got the money, I ain't going to worry about it. Whatever happens next year, happens next year.
But you've also got to look at it from our point. We don't know each year how many we're going to be short. We get our teacher allotment when in September, October.
Usually. We
start school in August.
Yep.
So we don't know until we're 2 months into the game whether we've got extra teachers or we've got a deficit. And then we have to scramble. But our budget from your board has already been set to us. So we just have to make our projections. Our baseline has not really changed that much in what we're asking for in current expense. Just the cost of living. We've added a few caveats, maybe a program here, a program there. The firefighter, for example, the firefighter academy, it was funded by the board, by your board, and earmarked to us. We honored that commitment to keep that in the process. But we can't know from day to day because we're dealing with a whole lot bigger bureaucracy than Stokes County is looking at. It's called the state. What that unfunded mandate to us is going to be, whether they're going to fund 5 teachers or we're going to say the class size should be this, we have to follow their directions. So to be able to say, y'all fund 10 teachers, well, the state may pay for 8, they may pay for 12. We don't know until 2 months after the game's already been played how many players we're going to get to play with.
You got a comment?
Yeah, question, if you don't mind, sir.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Well, I've done about 12 of these, and I can just about come to a conclusion exactly where we need to be. So my question that hasn't been asked is, and I think I have a pretty good idea because I did on the counties before the audit, which is fund balance. I know Lisa kept hounding Lisa to see what it was, and I knew I was pretty close because when you do a budget every year for 12 years, you understand. So I'm asking, my calculation of the ARPA monies that y'all got, et cetera, your fund balance should be between $2.5 and $3 million. Is that correct, Dr. Rice or Ms. Moore?
It should be, because our audit that ended last June, we had $2,380,000 fund balance. We've not actually appropriated any of that fund balance for the year we're in now. So I think it would be an accurate picture, anywhere from 2.5 to 3 that we should have, with the understanding that's an estimate. And we still, June payroll has not been issued yet. We're still working on that. We're getting all of these requests in from the schools where they've done tutoring and that kind of thing. We have 2 more months of electrical to pay, so there's a lot yet to come in. But based on projecting on what happened last June and comparing, I think that would be an accurate figure.
Thank you.
Current expense fund balance.
Yes, sir.
I got,
One of you guys have
anything else? I got one. Can you give me an idea of, I've been through, as county manager, as everybody knows, for a long time, and then elected official. I think I've been through 2 of these studies like Mason Borough, where you guys gave them some guidance, set of assumptions, terms of reference, whatever, to go do a study. The study came back and was completely ignored, it appears to me. You're going to completely ignore this one. You don't like it. It seems to me like that's what happened in like 2011, 12, whenever, sometime between the time I got back and the time I left, especially related to boundary lines. So I'm wondering, the reason I bring that up, I'm wondering how you're going to get to a solution on this plan by August, and what's the probability of that happening? That's kind of a question for elected officials.
I don't want to speak for the other board members, but I know I said going in, if we're going to do one, we're going to at least have a second opinion, because what we're doing now is going to affect the next 50 years of Stokes County schools. So we haven't acted on Mason Borough because we were already waiting on the ORED study. We're also waiting on DPI, and then unfortunately everybody at DPI that was doing that decided to go somewhere else to work. So we were going to have 3 studies, because if we've got 2 people that are experts or 2 different groups telling me here's the course of action, I'm more apt to agree with it. Just like getting a second opinion before you have your heart transplant.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that both doctors agree this is how you do it. So that's where we're standing. That you've heard us kind of be quiet. We've talked occasionally upon ourselves, but we're keeping it all to ourselves because we don't want to affect each other's vote or each other's opinion. We've got our own ideas. Mm-hmm. But until the second one comes in and we have that second opinion in front of us, then we'll go into a room and negotiate. Here's how we're going to go forward. We're going to take, we like this and we like this. We're going to make this.
My point is, you know, the reason you go out is to get an objective opinion that's not biased by any member of the board or whatever, based on whatever their preferences are. To me, it's kind of important, especially if you're getting the same kind of recommendations over and over, and that may, or I don't know how that would compare to the one that was done several years ago, but if you're getting the same kind of recommendations, I mean, I don't know how, you know, that's the one way you can tell the public it's not a biased report. It was done by an objective study that was well done or whatever, if you think it was. But
I heard it. I thought there was some serious flaws with that study.
Yeah, I did.
But why though? Yeah. Did you give them the terms of reference, the guidance on what was good and not good? And
how do you recommend to close 2 schools and put them into 2 schools that are already at capacity, and no idea of building a new school or even adding on to either of those schools? There was no recommendation.
I've just done a lot of studies in my various careers that I've done, and you give them guidance and assumptions and so forth ahead of time, and I've always got a pretty good study back. And
well,
so we don't seem to get good studies back, or either we or something. So
when I was on the board in 2011-12, we didn't do a school consolidation study. Mm-hmm. We never did one. We did an ORED study, but it wasn't to look at consolidating schools. But we did move the boundary between South Stokes and West Stokes, if you remember, to try to give South some more kids and to not have to add on to West when it got above capacity. Mm-hmm. My husband taught there then. They didn't have enough desks. They didn't have enough classrooms. It was pushing 1,200 kids, and we moved that boundary line, and we We gave Wes some kids. We opened the early college. We did some stuff that helped.
Let me
back
ask a
then.
different question then. On this study then, if I may be incorrect on that then, if you did move the boundaries, it didn't appear, just from my memory, they didn't follow a lot of what was in there. So this next study that Mike's talking about, is that gonna give you the information that you guys can get together and get us something out that we can, plan that we can then integrate into our cycle?
It's gonna give us a second independent opinion. So we get two totally separate groups. Now, two totally separate groups say the exact same thing, then it's like you said, we can say we went out for this. But if not, if I've got one doctor that tells me I need a heart transplant and one tells me I need a knee transplant, I'm going to a third doctor because somebody's way off. I don't believe everything I'm taking. I want the facts and the figures behind it.
Okay.
I mean, if
And the biggest problem I have with Masonboro, it still didn't eliminate the fact we still would have had 5 schools that people have high school diplomas from that we've got to maintain. They're 70, 75 years old, and it did not fix that aspect.
I'm not saying it was perfect or anything. It's just
it's
an
not perfect, so
objective
we
study.
want that second opinion to see what we like about both.
And I will say too, the Masonboro plan, I agree with Ms. Cox, and I think it was very flawed. And to give you an example, their plan closes King Elementary and Pinnacle Elementary and consolidates those students into Mount Olive and Poplar Springs. King Elementary has roughly 400 students. Pinnacle has roughly 150 students. So we're going to be taking 550 students and trying to fold them into 2 schools that are already close to capacity. We might could fold in 150 students or so into those 2 schools. I know we have. We've looked at the numbers on that, so that if that's a good round number, we've still got 400 students that we're going to have to redistrict out of the West Stokes district. And we're going to have to send them either to Nancy Reynolds or Germantown or Walnut Cove or wherever. And that doesn't make any sense, I don't think, to anybody on the board. And I had.
Why did they come up with that then? I mean,
we'll have to ask
they're
them
supposed
that.
to be experts.
Well, we'll have to ask them that. But
Make a bunch of money.
But that didn't. But that doesn't fly. And they're wanting to increase. They're wanting to take some students away from West Stokes and South Stokes and send them to North Stokes. And that's okay. I mean, but nobody here has advocated for closing any North Stokes or Piney Grove or anything like that. We're not advocating for closing those schools, but I think this, it's an efficiency study. So how does it make sense to me if you're going to have a kid that lives across the street and he can see the school, but now we're going to send him 30 or 40 minutes up the hill to North Stokes or Piney Grove? That doesn't make any sense to me as efficiency. So
It doesn't make sense to consolidate Southeastern into South Stokes when there's not enough athletic facilities to.
That's another thing that they did. They wanted to put Southeastern Middle School over to South Stokes. Well, if we do that, we're going to have to do a pretty hefty remodel at South Stokes in order to get enough classroom space, enough athletic fields.
I don't hear all the details.
Yeah.
I just hope y'all will figure something out in August so we can
I think we will
integrate into the cycle.
I'm sorry?
If you had to do over, would you wait on the other studies before you released all that information to the public?
Well, I think the public was wanting the information, and I don't have a problem with releasing it. I wanted to hear what they had to say. We had really high hopes with the Masonboro study. They put in a lot of time in Stokes County, and I don't know why they came up with the results that they did. But it's a problem. I mean, we've got to come up with a plan that the whole county is going to agree on, and that's going to be almost impossible.
That's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Well, there may be some aspects of the Masonboro group that prove themselves out. So I'm not going to say that we just wasted $15,000 on a quack doctor.
Wouldn't either.
We're going to say that we have an opinion. Now, everybody's got an opinion. Some are better than others. But until we know what the whole picture looks like, at least we've got an independent study showing us what one person thinks. At one time, we thought we were going to have 3 that came within a 3-month span.
And the decision we're making is not just going to affect the next 2 or 3 years. So, I mean, you look at the studies, what they thought was, and I think part of it is right. We do have an outside independent look, but also we've got to make sure we also understand the county itself, the county demographics, and so that's part of, I think, a decision that has to be made. Another decision that a lot of it hinges on the Masonburg group. I'm sure the one we're going to come up in a couple weeks to view, as well as the 8 different potential plans, 8 or 9 that the leadership of the school put together, is a grant that we may or may not get, and then there's a portion of funding from the county that we have to get that grant. Now, based on the capital money that I seen that we were given, we're $915,000 less than we got this year, and that's not included the minimum of 1.5 million that we're going to have to put in to get money. So we talk about plans. We need to know if we're going to be able to get at least $1.5 million from the county to even have a elementary school built. You get what I'm saying? So as far as we talk about plans, I think part of that plan is we're 915 less than what we received this year based on the recommendation. You get 2.7 million. We got 3.6 last year. So that's 915 less. So we've still got the same issues. If we got old stuff this year, we got old stuff next year. Plus, we're now needing an extra 1.5 to build if we're going to consolidate. Because if we're looking at closing 2, there's stipulations in that. How many schools you need to close to get that. And so, I get that. I agree that we need to make a decision. Keith, I completely agree with
for you to
yes.
make a decision.
But at the end of the day, the 5 of us, when we make that decision, it's a decision that's going to, there's plans, and I think the Masonburg plan, that was 12 or 15 years to complete part of that, and I might be wrong. We've got 8 or 9 plans rolling through our head. So, you got how many board transitions, how many potential superintendents? There's so we're looking at that as well. No offense, but there's a lot of
15 years.
You'll be retired in 15 years, yeah.
I'm a young man.
I'm just saying that's part of the decision making, is that, at least from my perspective, and just me talking, if we're talking about closing schools, part of the issue with the expenditures is the building itself, right? The kids, the teachers, the staff piece of thing, that's going to kind of stay the same in all the plans. For the most part, there's variations there. But I'm not for closing a school and then just leaving a building, because if you got a bad roof with kids in it and we put new people in it, it's still got a bad roof at $900,000 or whatever. So from my perspective, that's what I'm looking at too, is the use of that after the fact. But
one thing y'all need to know, we got private businesses that are interested in any schools that are vacated. So don't be tearing them down.
Okay.
One thing I would like to say real quick, and I'm not totally defending the Masonburg Group's presentation, but they tried to take a lot of things into account based on their experiences. One of those things that they took into account is to do when you start getting into different plans, they start costing a lot more money. They would watch live streams of meetings in this room, the commissioners' meetings. They didn't think we would get a lot of money. One of the plans we put together with a new high school, a new middle school, was about $150, $200 million, depending on prices. They said something like that, while that is a wonderful plan and would be the most efficient thing you could do, you're never going to get that money. And so why we're trying to also come up with something that may be affordable in your county. And so they tried to put that into effect too, which kind of skewed the thinking, because when you're trying to look at what the price tag you making that would go with a plan that could actually get approved. So there are a lot of different factors that go into that. And I've worked with a study back in 2006 in Asheboro when I was there. And ORED came in and they threw out some different scenarios. But then the same type thing happened where the Board of Education said, while these parks are good, there's some tradition here that we need to honor, and we need to adjust some things here. And so I'm confident that when the board has a bunch of information, then they take the local knowledge that goes with it, they can come up with a good plan. And again, we're there to provide the data and do all that stuff with them, and I think they're committed to doing that. So I believe our board's committed to doing that, and this fall we'll have a plan.
So Justin, I have a quick, I'm sorry, Rick.
Just real quick one, and then I'll come to you.
Okay.
So, along those same lines, so on your capital spending, you won't come, you're pretty sure you're not gonna commit to spend capital somewhere that then your plan contradicts that? Are you kind of thinking in
We may
those
need to
terms?
patch some things here and there. We may need to patch a roof. We may need to do something like that to get us through a year or two. Again, we're gonna apply for grants. There's no guarantee with a grant. I mean, it may not be funded this year. It may be next year it's funded. It may be a third year that it's funded. So again, that's where we come together and we say, do we wait? Or do we get does the county fund this one, and then maybe the grant funds the next one? That's where we've got to get to find out what the plan is, and then we start looking for the funding streams to make the plan work.
I'm just saying, don't spend it on things that are gonna get closed.
There's lots.
Absolutely.
One thing I've learned in this position, there are a lot of eyes on you.
Well, we're going to spend it with the future involved. We're not going to go put a new roof on a building that we don't think we're going to be in 2 years.
Okay.
But the other thing we need to is you're saying we need to. You hope we come up with a plan. Our plan includes y'all being willing to commit 6.1 or 6.5 million for us to get a grant for a new elementary school. If we know we don't
I'll
have
tax people for that immediately, already.
yeah, I mean, but we just need to know that that's going to be a commitment, because us applying for it would be worthless if, let's say, a different board says, no, we don't. If it happens next year, we're fine, but, you know, 4 years, nobody knows.
Matches, I think our board will. Ron, go ahead.
Yeah, and everyone that just spoke tied in to what I was going to ask. Give you an example, Justin, as you were giving your explanation. And Mike and Rick and Keith all sort of came in together with it. But what if someone, a taxpayer, lived here all their life, comes up to you and they say, Justin, last ADM last month at Pine Hall, I'm just using that example, was 98 kids. I don't know how many is at Pine Hall right now.
103.
Okay, so 103. Capital, y'all are asking for 1.1 million dollars for Pine Hall. 1.1 million. Pine Hall has 103 students. And they're gonna say, Justin, how are you justifying giving Pine Hall or giving, that's what's in here. I've read it twice today.
Right.
1.1 million for a school that's got 103 kids. And and I know y'all not made that decision, but I know that people all over the communities of Walnut Cove, Germantown, Pine Hall, and Sandy Ridge, they're all saying, you know, and that's gossip. That's not from y'all. And I want you to be clear, it's not from the Board of Education. But everybody is saying Pine Hall is going to be closed down after next year. We're going to put 1.1 million into Pine Hall for 1 year?
Ronnie, is this the one you're looking at? Because this is the one we submitted. It doesn't have that. Pine Hall just has a,
I'm looking at the one that was in this notebook.
which one?
Let me explain that. What this is, what y'all received were the total needs that we saw from the principal level and maintenance level. The next column says priority. And Pine Hall doesn't have a priority listed beside it. And so while those needs do remain, there are $1.1 million worth of needs. No, we don't intend on budgeting any money for that need. And again, I didn't expect, I'm not gonna say, I didn't expect every one of these projects to get funded. Again, I knew it was gonna be $2.2 to $3 million, depending on the tax revenue that comes in from those special funds. So in knowing that that is probably what we were going to get, we have listed in that far right corner the district priority of ones that we would expect to fund out of what we expected the tax dollars to come to. But that we wanted you to know these other needs exist and they're there. But no, I don't think the board is looking at.
And that's if everything remained the same.
It was not, it wasn't listed as priority, but it was listed in here.
Those are needs.
Because I highlighted this, and it says Pine Hall replace pressure tank on drinking water, new roof on all the buildings except the gym, and renovate the boys' restroom, $250,000, $750,000, and $100,000. That's $1.1 million.
Yes, sir. Those are needs at the school, but the board has not listed those as priorities for this year.
And knowing people, most of the people in the county, let's face reality, nobody knows what y'all's final plan is going to be. Y'all don't even know it yet. Because you're waiting on ORED, right?
Yes, sir.
And after you get that study, then you'll come together. I'm sure all the board members will probably each have their own opinions of how to put this together. And you'll come up with a plan. But, you know, I just want to make sure that if somebody gets a hold of this, and they might not know that the priority that you got on the corner of it, it doesn't list priority, but they'll see the 1.1 million. How are you going to explain it to me? Just the way Dr. Rice did right then? Is that your explanation of 1.1 million for Pine Hall?
Mm-hmm. Just like Sandy Ridge, I mean, that's another older school, but you're looking at almost 200,000 for windows, canopy. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, to fund everything, it's what, 11.8.
Yeah.
We've never got 11.8. So, but I mean, we are 915 less than we was last year, correct? Mm-hmm. As recommended.
If I can make just one comment.
Sure.
The reason for that is I believe the previous county manager, Shannon Shaver, I believe she gave the entire fund balance that was kept here at the county. She went ahead and gave all of it, that we kept the entirety of it. So that's why that 1.25 million, that's where that come from, because we had just, I think the Board of Commissioners had just given a little bit of that fund balance over the years. So, and Shannon just gave the entirety of it last year.
Got it.
At this time of the year, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm certainly not a master of county finance. I hold her hand to get me through school finance. At this time of the year, y'all's quarter of tax revenue has not been come in yet. So y'all are doing projections. So when the budget comes into us, there's a projection. If there's more than that, it went into a fund balance. So over the years, it had built up to about 1.2 million. And so last year they said, well, since we have this here, it's designated for you. We're going to give you that 1.2 million in addition to what we project that would be there. And so that's where that money came from last year, was off of the difference between projection and reality and tax receipts over the years that 1.2 million had built up.
But that comes in on the 15th.
Right. Yeah, previous commissioner boards, some of them wanted to hold the money even though it was designated for you. I never thought that was a good idea.
Basically, they said if we had emergencies, it would be there.
Yeah, but you can handle your emergencies if you have the money.
And I feel like we have done a good job not
Yeah,
spending all the capital fundings that we have, and even on our fund balance on our general fund, I think we've with Ms. Moore's help we've done a great job making sure that we have a little cushion there so that we don't have to come back up for more monies as we go forward.
Do any commissioners have any other questions?
I don't.
No.
I don't think Sonia does.
If she did, she didn't want to
say
ask
before
her.
she left.
So
Should we adjourn, leave, and see, and just watch the look on her face?
Strict instructions to be done
Real
by
simple,
7.
Mike.
That's
Mike, when she gets up and leaves, she forfeits her chance.
I thought I heard her say I'd make a motion to adjourn. I don't know.
We're ready to do that if y'all are. I'm ready.
So moved.
Then Vaughn, do you have anything else on your side before I make a motion?
Any other comments from the board members?
Just want to say thank you all for meeting with us now, and to answer your question, one of the major flaws with the Mason Borough was they were using core values, not actual classroom values, where we would actually have to build on to 2 schools. Probably $100 million, enough to build another school to put those kids in there because their numbers were skewed. That's why it wasn't what.
And, you know, we can't afford to make a bad decision or a rush decision either. So I'm glad that, you know, the board hadn't ran out and hurried things along and made decisions that have potentially a not so great effect for the next 50 years. So I think being smart, being cautious, and gathering as much info as possible, you know, is needed because, like I know Justin has said many times, you don't want kids' zip code to determine the quality of education or their access to education. So, you know, I think that's important to this board as well.
I worry about education in general with AI and everything coming on, whether we even be using school buildings 10 years from now, but that's not anything we can take action on today.
But I think it will be proven, and Dr. Rice probably can, you probably know more about this than me, is in person, in front of a classroom, and in that setting is definitely preferred way of learning. So I even with AI, at least from my perspective, I hope we stay in a building. So would you agree?
We tried distance education.
Yeah,
it did not.
I mean, even Sonia mentioned that. I mean, with all the things going on in this world with our current culture, I think could be contributed to kids being alone at the house too much. So anyway.
Well, and again, we talked a lot about education tonight, and I'm grateful for that. We're also the largest employer in the county. So we have to have HR departments. We've got to have the finance departments. We've got to have those type of things. We're also an athletic organization. We're also event planners with graduations. We're also mental health. We're also physical health with nurses. We're also the largest food service restaurant in the county with school nutrition. When people bring us their kids, they expect us to do everything. And again, our people do a great job of it. I'm proud to work with them.
And I would like to add too, as Ms. Knight was talking about quality of education, I think when we went to these graduations and we hear the achievements of the students at each and every school, whether it's early college, North Stokes, South Stokes, West Stokes, or even Meadowbrook, I think it's very clear that we do have quality education in all 4 corners of the county. And no matter which high school you go to or which elementary or middle school you go to, we see achievements in each and every school. So we're not, we're supporting each and every one of our schools, and we fully intend to do that in the future. We're not going to not support a school or not provide a school with what they need. But I think it is obvious to everybody that we do have a few more schools than we need, and we're going to have to come to an agreement on what that's going to look like going forward. And I think we can come to a conclusion on that. I think we've made a lot of progress, and I do think one thing that helps us is knowing how much funding we can get from the county in order to execute a plan. If we're going to have 20 million, our plan looks a lot different than it does if we got 150 million. And I've said before, if I'm going to go buy a house, I've got to know what my budget is, how much I can afford before I go start looking at houses. It's no use for me to go look at the $1 million house if I can only afford a $250,000 house. And I think any guidance that we can get from this board, from the commissioners, as to what our total funding is going to be, helps us make our decision instead of coming up with a plan and then coming up and say, okay, well, here's our plan. It's going to cost us, $150 million. We can come up with a great plan for $150 million, and it would really be a nice plan, but we can't afford it. We don't feel like we can afford it. So I think that's kind of part of our rock and a hard place for us is what can we, what are we going to have to work with? And I know it's tough. I mean, I know that's a sometimes I'm glad that we're on the side where we can't all we can do is receive the funds. We can't go out and take the funds. You know, we can't set a tax rate, right? We don't have the authority to tax the population. We just have to accept what we were given. And in one sense, that's maybe good. In the other sense of it, it makes it hard. But with the two of us boards working together, I think we can come up with a good solution. And like I said at the opening comments, I think these boards have worked very well together in the recent years and even now. I think we enjoy the meetings together, and for the most part we get along, and it's a great thing to do. So if y'all are feeling very generous one day and come up with a whole lot of money, call me.
I don't foresee us giving you a number and you putting a plan with it. That's kind of the cart before the horse, and we're going to have a plan before we look at numbers.
Well, then the plan may come, and then you say, well, we can't do that plan. Go back and do another one, and it's going to prolong the agony a little bit, is to try to come up with a happy medium. But if we just knew about how much we got to spend.
No, we can't pull it out of the air.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna do that. The rest of them might.
Well, then we'll have to pull a plan out of the air.
We need to have a plan before we talk about.
So if we come up with a good plan, it's a good efficient plan, and you're saying you can fund it.
We'll look at it when we see it and tell you if we can or not.
Okay.
Because part of our game, we've talked about $30 million for an elementary school. Really, we need more than one.
We've already told you like it today.
Yeah, but
we'll match that funding the minute you get that $30 million.
Okay, is that good for multiple $30 million schools?
Probably so.
But there's
I don't want to pull a giant number.
I mean, let's say two elementaries and renovate a middle or high. You're looking.
Don't be shy.
Yeah.
I like that plan.
I think Amber might be concerned with your
I saw you
comment.
gasp.
But there's also no guarantee that we can get those grants.
Right.
Those grants are something we apply for, and if we don't get the grant, then we're another year out applying for another grant. There's no guarantee that we'll get a grant. So if we don't get the grant, then we're back to the county funding all the projects that we're going to have to do. And all we can do is apply for the grant. The grants are awarded, I guess, through DPI, and we're at their mercy on what we get and what we don't get.
As one commissioner, I would tell you that any big grant you get to build a school, and I have to do a match, I'll go raise taxes to get the match. Automatic.
I think that's pretty much a no-brainer, because if we're going to get a $30 million grant and it costs us
but that's different.
$2.5 million.
Yeah, that's different pulling a big number out of the air and giving it to you guys.
But on the flip
With
side,
no plan.
if we're looking at a grant, we're needing a plan. Okay, we'll take the grant completely out of the plan, and we still got 19 schools. We still got millions of dollars that need funding. So how do we fund
You
that?
won't have 19 schools
We'll
at
have
that point
19
because
schools
you're
in the plan.
consolidating. Y'all made that clear.
Right.
So you're not gonna have 19 schools.
Okay, we have 16. We're still going to have
Difference?
Yeah. Okay. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you.
I just want to see a plan before I'm going to talk about funding. I mean, maybe the other commissioners are different, but.
We will come up with a plan. We have set a deadline of August the 31st. We do hope to meet that. If we have to have some special meetings, I think that's what we'll do. I think the board is committed to coming up with a plan. And so we'll come and present the plan. And if you want to fund it, you can. If not, then I guess we'll have to start all over. But I think that's the big thing for us is, where is the funding going to come from? Is it going to be borrowed funds? I don't know that we can raise taxes that much, but there again, that's not our board's decision. That's your board's decision.
Well, we did one project where we built new schools and renovated them, and we raised taxes 4 cents. We can do that over and over as much as we want to do once we have a plan that we. I mean, that's the only way to do it. We haven't raised taxes in 9 years. We don't have any money, any revenues. I mean, we're broke.
I think what I've heard y'all mention, the common theme is buy-in and transparency and and the public just knowing what that involves, and hopefully they'll be understanding of the funding. But again, also on the flip side, it's what percentage of residents utilize the schools versus what percentage of residents don't, and versus who's paying taxes, you know, so that's a whole mix in all this that has to be considered as well.
Yep, it's a very
good motion
tough
while
decision.
Mr. Chairman of the County Commissioners,
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn at this time.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Commissioner, say aye.
Aye.
Do you need to adjourn?
I made a while ago, y'all.
That's second.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Second, all in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.
Thank you all.